So what do Michael Jordan, Usain Bolt, and Michael Phelps all have in common? Well, other than the fact that they're all retired now, they are all past the age of 30. Now, interestingly, when you pass the age of 30, something happens to your body. And so what are the key changes that happen that mean that Usain Bolt can no longer perform like he used to, and Michael Jordan can't dunk like he used to? Fundamentally, when we hit 30, our muscle mass decreases. For men, our testosterone starts to decrease, and for men and women, our muscle mass starts to decline. This means we actually get a little bit slower. We also start to ache a little bit more with those aches and pains, which means that we recover slower, and it means that we're not as responsive on the field. So inevitably, with the exception of a few elite performers that have continued on into their late 30s, we have to stop and we have to pass over the crown to the new generation, the upcoming youngsters that are in their late teens and early 20s. But how fit can we actually be in our 30s? And are there things that we can do to mitigate against it? Here are 5 things that I do now on a regular basis. Now I'm 38 years old, that allow me to stay fit on a regular basis despite not being a spring chicken. First thing to consider is that when we reach over 30, but in particular over 35 years old, our goals often change. And so you'll see that a lot of influencers now that were in their 20s when they started their YouTube channels are now starting to become older. And what happens a lot of the times is we shift our priorities. Quite often in our late teens, early 20s, we want to train and work out and we want to look good for perhaps the opposite sex. But as we get older, we realize that health is actually much more important than it is to look good. Now, having been on the receiving end of some horrendous injuries in recent years, you've got to understand that, number one, when you're training in your 30s, particularly in your later 30s, what you've actually got to consider is how prone to injury you are compared to your 20s and how long it can take for you to recover. And so what we need to do is give ourselves slightly more recovery time to make sure that we can recuperate, keep that protein high to get that muscle synthesis going, and make sure that we're consistently lifting heavy weight. Now, number 2 is to understand that your body does slow down, your metabolism slows down, and you often move a little bit less. If I look at my little boy, he's running around all day, constantly, never stopping. But we tend to be, particularly if we're in office jobs, sitting at our desks and quite sedentary. So what we do is we move less, and therefore you need to consciously make the effort to move more. And this can be anything from going out for more regular walks to taking up running or taking something up that is more cardiovascular that gives you that extra few hundred calories that you need to burn, which ties in nicely to our third point, which is that our BMR may reduce slightly. So let's say you're an average male, 2,300 calories a day. Actually, you may find that as you move into your late 30s, particularly in your early 40s, you may only need 2,200, 2,100 a day, slightly less, which might not seem like much, but over the weeks and over the months, you will find that it will have an impact on your weight if you maintain the same energy output and input that you did in your 20s. The fourth point is that we often don't realize when the weight gain increases and our fitness level decreases. And this is something that I refer to as the small weight gradual compound effect. So for example, let's just say we put on 0.5 kilogram of weight every month. You might not think that's much. 0.5 kilogram every month, what's the worst that can happen? But actually, if you think about that, that is going to be 6 kilograms a year, which again, might not be much if you were, say, 70 kilogram, 176 centimeter male. But over time, 5 years, over 10 years, it can accumulate to 10, 20, and even 30 kilograms of fat increase, which then becomes incredibly difficult to shift because of the issues that we've just talked about, which is that your muscle mass decreases, you move less, and therefore you're going to be less likely to shift the weight. And it's often why we see people in their late 30s, early 40s, dad bods and beer bellies, because they aren't able to shift the weight that they've accumulated gradually over the years. And number 5 is to focus on doing something that you particularly enjoy. And so you've seen a lot of people in recent years take it to things like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. You may see people playing five-a-side football in the evenings. You'll find that over time, your habits will shift and your enjoyment will shift. So whether it's just that you want to go play tennis or go running or pick up another sport, you'll find that the key thing is to do something that you're enjoying rather than something that's just for the sake of improving your health. If you're above 30 years old and you've stayed fit, I want to know, what are your habits? What are you doing to stay fit? And how have your habits changed since you were 30 years old?